The Galactic Council's emergency session hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered around the crystalline conference table. Ambassador Zixthara of the Vorthak Confederacy stood at the podium, her forearms gesticulating wildly as she addressed the assembly. "Esteemed colleagues, we face an unprecedented crisis," she announced, her translator converting her chittering into the common tongue. "The Zarathi Empire has claimed 17 more systems in the past lunar cycle. Their expansion shows no signs of stopping, and our traditional diplomatic channels have failed." A ripple of concerned murmurs swept through the chamber. The Zarathi were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate apex predators, a species that had evolved on a nightmare world where everything existed to kill everything else. They stood 3 meters tall, possessed natural armor plating, and could survive in environments that would instantly kill most other species. Their military might was legendary, and their hunger for conquest seemed infinite. Commander Veltar of the Hegemony Defense Force leaned forward, his scaled face grim. "The Zarathi have rejected every peace offering. They view diplomacy as weakness. Their homeworld of Zarathus Prime is classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest possible rating on our habitability scale. Which brings us to our desperate proposal," Zixthara continued, her voice trembling slightly. "We have identified one species that might, and I stress might, be capable of matching the Zarathi in terms of survival capabilities and tactical thinking." The holographic display above the table flickered to life, showing a blue-green planet orbiting a yellow star. Several species recoiled instinctively at what they saw on the screen. "Earth," Zixthara announced, "home to a species calling themselves humans. Their world registers as a Class 11 death world, just one step below Zarathus Prime." High Counselor Mordun of the Peaceful Systems Alliance nearly fell from his hoverchair. "You cannot be serious. Look at that planet. The atmospheric composition alone would kill most of us within minutes. The gravity is twice what my people can tolerate, and the wildlife." He gestured helplessly at the display showing various Earth predators. "Precisely why they might be our only hope," Zixthara replied. "Our xenobiological analysis suggests humans possess remarkable adaptability and resilience. They've survived and thrived in every environment their planet offers, from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts, from toxic swamps to crushing ocean depths." Dr. Kethvier, the Council's chief xenobiologist, accessed her data tablet with trembling tentacles. "The preliminary reports are disturbing. Humans regularly engage in activities that would be considered suicide missions for other species. They climb mountains that reach into their planet's death zone, dive to crushing depths without protective equipment, and voluntarily expose themselves to temperatures that would freeze our blood solid. But what's truly remarkable," she continued, her voice filled with a mixture of horror and fascination, "is their psychological profile. They don't just survive these conditions, they seek them out for entertainment. They call it extreme sports." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Admiral Koresh of the Star Navy broke it with a bitter laugh. "So our plan is to invite a species of Deathworld psychopaths to help us deal with another species of Deathworld conquerors? What could possibly go wrong?" Zixthara's expression hardened. "Because, Admiral, these Deathworld psychopaths have something the Zarathi lack. They've demonstrated remarkable cooperation within their own species. Despite their violent history, they've achieved global unity and have begun peaceful space exploration. They've sent us friendship messages and scientific data, showing genuine curiosity about other life forms." She activated another section of the display, showing human cities, art, and culture. "Yes, they're incredibly dangerous. Yes, their world would kill most of us. But they're also capable of great beauty, innovation, and, most importantly, they understand the concept of alliance." Commander Veltar studied the data streaming across his console. Their technology level is adequate, not advanced by our standards, but they show remarkable ingenuity. They've weaponized everything from controlled explosions to focused electromagnetic radiation. Their military tactics are creative. Creative is one word for it, Dr. Kethvier muttered, reviewing combat footage from human history. "They've turned warfare into an art form. Multiple simultaneous theaters, combined arms tactics, psychological warfare, asymmetric strategies. And they do all this while wearing minimal protection compared to what we would require. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued that inviting humans would be like introducing a second plague to cure the first. Others insisted that desperate times called for desperate measures. High Counselor Mordun raised a crucial point. Even if we agree to this madness, why would humans help us? What's in it for them? They barely know we exist. Zixtara smiled for the first time since the session began. That's perhaps the most encouraging aspect of their psychology. According to our cultural analysis, humans have an almost pathological need to help others, even strangers. They call it humanitarian aid, and regularly risk their lives for people they've never met. If we present our situation properly, they might help us simply because it's the right thing to do. And if that doesn't work, Commander Veltar added grimly, we can offer them something every Deathworld species values: resources and territory. The Zarathi have claimed systems rich in rare minerals and habitable worlds. Humans would benefit greatly from galactic trade partnerships. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone expected: 24 in favor, 23 against. The deciding vote came from an unexpected source: Ambassador Quillnex of the Merchant Guild. I abstained initially, the elderly trade representative explained, because this seems like madness. But I've reviewed the economic projections. If the Zarathi continue their expansion at the current rate, the galactic economy will collapse within 50 standard years. Sometimes, the greatest risk is taking no risk at all. As the session concluded, Zixtara felt the weight of the galaxy's future pressing down on her shoulders. In 3 days, she would board a diplomatic vessel bound for Earth. She would be the first galactic representative to make official contact with humanity, and possibly the last hope for galactic civilization. The irony wasn't lost on her. To save themselves from one species of Deathworld monsters, they were about to invite another to the table. She only prayed that humans were as reasonable as their cultural analysis suggested, and not as terrifying as their planet implied. Deep in her research files, Dr. Kethvier discovered something that chilled her to her core. Among the human cultural artifacts they'd intercepted was a simple phrase that seemed to define their entire species: hold my beer and watch this. According to the translation matrix, this was typically uttered just before humans attempted something spectacularly dangerous and completely unnecessary. As she watched the diplomatic vessel prepare for departure, Dr. Kethvier couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to discover what it meant when an entire species lived by those words. The United Nations Emergency Assembly had been in session for 18 hours straight. President Sarah Chun stood before the delegates, her face illuminated by the holographic display showing the alien vessel that had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the situation. We are no longer alone in the universe, and, apparently, we're being invited to what amounts to an intergalactic war council. The alien message had been transmitted in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, and dozens of other Earth languages. The translation technology alone had sent the scientific community into a frenzy of excitement and terror. But it was the content that had world leaders losing sleep. Secretary General Maria Santos activated her tablet, reading from the official transcript. To the human species of Earth, greetings from the Galactic Council. We require your assistance in a matter of utmost urgency. A hostile species known as the Zarathi threatens the stability of our galaxy. Your unique capabilities may be crucial in finding a peaceful resolution. We invite representatives to attend an emergency summit aboard our diplomatic vessel. General Rodriguez, head of the UN Space Command, laughed humorlessly. Unique capabilities. They want us because we're crazy enough to fight monsters that scared off 47 other alien species. Anyone else see the problem with this? Dr. Emily Watson, the UN's chief xenobiologist, had spent the past 3 days analyzing everything they could about the galactic situation. Actually, General, I think there's more to this than simple combat effectiveness. The cultural data they transmitted suggests the Galactic Council operates on principles of diplomacy and consensus. They're not asking us to be soldiers, they're asking us to be negotiators. Negotiators with what amounts to alien space Nazis who've conquered 17 star systems. Admiral Hassan shook his head. What exactly are we supposed to negotiate with? President Chen pulled up the analysis reports her team had compiled. According to the intelligence package they sent us, the Zarathi respect strength above all else. Every diplomatic mission has failed because they view peaceful overtures as weakness. But here's the interesting part. Humans have a history of successful negotiations even with hostile parties. She gestured to the historical examples scrolling across the screen. Cuban Missile Crisis, Camp David Accords, the Good Friday Agreement. Time and again, humans have found ways to negotiate even when both sides wanted to fight. Foreign Minister Zhang Wei leaned forward. But those were human-to-human negotiations. These Zarathi evolved on a planet that makes Australia look like a vacation resort. Their entire culture is built around survival of the strongest. Dr. Watson smiled grimly, which is exactly why they might respect us. According to the Council's data, Earth is one of only 3 planets in known space that approaches Zarathi homeworld conditions. The difference is, we learn to cooperate instead of just compete. The debate continued, but President Chen knew the decision had already been made. Earth couldn't ignore this opportunity, both for the potential benefits and the risks of refusal. If humanity declined and the galaxy fell to the Zarathi, Earth would eventually face them alone. The question isn't whether we'll participate, she finally said. The question is who we send. General Rodriguez immediately volunteered the military's best negotiators, but Dr. Watson shook her head. The aliens specifically requested representatives who embody human resilience and adaptability. They want to see what makes us unique. So we send our extreme athletes and survival experts? Admiral Hassan asked skeptically. Not exactly, President Chen replied, activating another display. We send a team that represents the full spectrum of human capability. Military, civilian, scientific, cultural. People who've faced impossible odds and found ways to succeed. Over the next 6 hours, they assembled the most unusual diplomatic mission in human history. Colonel Marcus Thompson, a former Special Forces operator who'd survived 3 tours in Earth's most hostile environments. Dr. Priya Sharma, a disaster relief specialist who'd coordinated rescue operations during the worst natural disasters of the past decade. James Murphy, a deep-sea engineer who'd spent more time in environments that would kill most humans than in normal atmosphere. Lisa Chun, a cultural anthropologist who specialized in conflict resolution. And, surprisingly, Maria Santos insisted on leading the delegation herself. Madam Secretary General, President Chen protested. The risks are enormous. We don't even know if their life support systems are compatible with human physiology. Santos smiled. That's exactly why I need to go. If we're asking these beings to trust humanity with their survival, humanity should trust them with ours. Besides, if their preliminary assessment is correct, their ship environment will be safer for us than it is for most of them. The truth of that statement became apparent when the human delegation boarded the alien vessel. The Galactic Council ship was a marvel of engineering, but the environmental controls were set to accommodate the most fragile species among the Council members. For humans, it felt like a pleasantly cool spring day. Ambassador Zixthara met them at the airlock, and her reaction upon seeing them was immediate and intense. Despite her 4 arms and chitinous exterior, her body language clearly conveyed shock. The humans walked casually through an environment that required her to wear a full environmental suit. Secretary General Santos, she said through her translator, welcome aboard. I must admit, seeing humans in person is remarkable. You show no signs of environmental stress whatsoever. Colonel Thompson grinned. Ma'am, this is about as comfortable as it gets. Reminds me of a nice morning in Colorado. Dr. Sharma was examining the ship's construction with professional interest. Fascinating engineering. The atmospheric recycling system is incredibly sophisticated. Though I notice you're pumping in additional oxygen for our benefit, we could function normally on about half this concentration. The alien ambassador's translator made a sound that might have been a gulp. Half concentration? But that's approaching the minimal survival threshold for most council species. Yeah, we're weird that way, James Murphy said cheerfully, running his hand along the ship's hull. This metal work is beautiful, by the way. What's the pressure differential between here and the vacuum outside? When Zixtara told him, Murphy nodded appreciatively. Nice safety margin. I've worked in underwater habitats with less than half that differential. Of course, if something goes wrong down there, you get crushed instead of just having a bad day. Lisa Chun was taking detailed notes on the cultural implications of every interaction. Ambassador, may I ask about the other species' reactions to environmental stress? Understanding their psychological baseline will be crucial for the negotiations ahead. As they toured the ship, it became clear that the humans weren't just surviving in the alien environment, they were thriving. While the council representatives moved carefully and spoke of the risks inherent in space travel, the humans explored with the casual confidence of tourists. The real shock came when they reached the observation deck and got their first look at the assembled council fleet. Hundreds of ships representing dozens of species, all maintaining careful distances from each other due to various environmental and safety concerns. Impressive, Colonel Thompson noted. Though the formation is pretty defensive. Are they expecting trouble? Zixtara's translator conveyed her confusion. Expecting trouble? Colonel, we are surrounded by the vacuum of space, radiation fields, gravitational anomalies, and potential mechanical failures. We are in constant danger. The humans exchanged glances. Dr. Sharma spoke gently. Ambassador, with respect, this seems like a fairly standard space environment. What specific threats are you concerned about? The question led to a 2-hour conversation that left the alien ambassador questioning everything she thought she knew about risk assessment. The humans casually discussed radiation levels that would require emergency evacuation protocols for most species. They analyzed potential equipment failures with the same tone other species used to discuss the weather. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to view the entire situation as an interesting challenge rather than a terrifying ordeal. When James Murphy suggested that the council fleet could improve its safety margins by adopting more aggressive maintenance schedules and redundant systems, Zixtara realized she was seeing human problem-solving in action. These weren't just Deathworld survivors, they were Deathworld engineers. They didn't just endure hostile environments, they systematically conquered them. As the ship approached the summit location, a massive space station positioned near a neutron star, Zixtara felt a mixture of hope and terror. The humans seemed genuinely interested in helping, and their casual competence was remarkable. But she couldn't shake the memory of Dr. Kethvier's final warning. Humans don't just solve problems, Ambassador. They solve them in ways that create entirely new categories of problems we never imagined. Looking at Secretary General Santos calmly reviewing diplomatic protocols while surrounded by enough radiation to kill most known life forms, Zixtara began to understand what that meant. The question wasn't whether humans could handle the challenges ahead. The question was whether the galaxy could handle the humans. The neutral zone station hung in space like a massive metal flower, its petals designed to accommodate the wildly different environmental needs of dozens of species. Each section maintained its own atmosphere, gravity, and temperature ranges, connected by a central hub where the most critical negotiations would take place. What made the station truly remarkable wasn't its size or engineering, but its location. Positioned near the event horizon of a neutron star, it existed in one of the most hostile environments imaginable. The radiation levels would cook most organic matter within hours, and the gravitational stresses could tear apart poorly designed vessels. It had been chosen specifically because the Zarathi respected displays of strength and courage. Secretary General Santos stood in the central hub alongside her team, watching as the various council species arrived in their heavily shielded vessels. Each ship bristled with defensive systems and emergency evacuation pods. The precautions were extensive and, from a human perspective, entirely reasonable. Then, the Zarathi arrived, and everything changed. Their ship was a nightmare of functional design, all angles and armor plating, with weapon systems that were barely concealed. Unlike the council vessels, it showed no signs of defensive measures against the environment. The Zarathi apparently considered the neutron star's radiation and gravity to be acceptable background conditions. Well, Colonel Thompson muttered, watching the alien warship dock, they certainly know how to make an entrance. Ambassador Zixthara approached the human delegation, her environmental suit's radiation indicators flashing alarming warnings. The Zarathi have agreed to this meeting only because they're curious about you, she said, her voice tight with stress. They've never encountered another species that voluntarily operates in environments like this. Dr. Sharma checked her tablet, reviewing the psychological profiles they'd compiled. Their culture values strength, directness, and proven capability. They despise what they perceive as weakness. The good news is that humans have plenty of experience dealing with aggressive personalities. The bad news, Lisa Chen added, is that every successful human negotiation with aggressive parties has relied on finding common ground. We need to discover what the Zarathi want besides conquest. The Central Hub's main chamber was a marvel of engineering, with environmental controls that could adapt to almost any species' needs. As the delegates assembled, the humans noticed they were the only ones who seemed comfortable. The council representatives wore various forms of protective gear, while the Zarathi delegation entered in what appeared to be standard clothing. The Zarathi were as impressive in person as their reputation suggested. Standing 3 meters tall, with natural armor plating and predatory grace, they moved like apex predators surveying potential prey. Their leader, War Prime Kethmore, fixed his attention on the humans immediately. "So," he said in heavily accented but fluent English, "you are the species the council believes can match us. You look remarkably fragile for supposed Deathworld inhabitants." Secretary General Santos stepped forward, meeting his gaze directly. "War Prime Kethmore, thank you for agreeing to these negotiations. You're correct that humans might appear fragile compared to your people. We've found that appearances can be deceiving." Kethmore's laugh was a sound like grinding metal. "Indeed they can. I've reviewed the data on your homeworld, Class 11 Deathworld, yet your species seems to thrive there. Tell me, human, what is the most dangerous predator on your planet?" The question caught several council representatives off guard, but Santos smiled. "That would depend on the environment and circumstances, War Prime. In the oceans, perhaps the great white shark or the saltwater crocodile. On land, maybe the polar bear or the African lion. But, honestly, the most dangerous predator on Earth is another human." The Zarathi delegation exchanged glances. Kethmore's expression shifted from dismissive to interested. "You prey upon your own species?" "Not exactly," Colonel Thompson interjected. "We compete with each other, sometimes violently. But we've also learned to cooperate on a scale no other Earth species has achieved. We're social predators, if you will." Dr. Sharma pulled up a holographic display showing human population centers. "War Prime, humans have colonized every continent on our planet, from the frozen Antarctic to the scorching Sahara Desert. We live in environments that would kill most of the species in this room. And we do it not by being individually stronger, but by working together. Cooperation." War Prime Kethmore said the word like it tasted strange. A concept the council species understand well. They huddle together for safety, sharing resources and technology. But this has made them weak. "With respect," Santos replied, "I think you're misunderstanding what human cooperation looks like. We don't huddle for safety. We coordinate for efficiency." James Murphy activated another display, this one showing human engineering projects. "War Prime, humans have built structures that reach into our planet's stratosphere, tunnels that span vast underwater distances, and vessels that can survive in the crushing depths of our oceans. We don't do this by avoiding danger. We do it by understanding danger and planning accordingly." The Zarathi leader studied the images with growing interest. "Impressive. But what does this have to do with our expansion? The galaxy has resources we require. Territory our growing population needs. Why should we negotiate when we can simply take what we want?" Lisa Chun had been waiting for this opening. "Because, War Prime, taking by force is the least efficient method of resource acquisition. It requires constant military expenditure, creates ongoing resistance, and ultimately limits your expansion potential." She pulled up economic models that had been prepared specifically for this moment. "Your current expansion rate, while impressive, is ultimately unsustainable. You're acquiring systems faster than you can effectively integrate them. The resistance you're generating is forcing you to maintain larger military forces than necessary. You're suggesting we're being inefficient?" Kethmore's tone carried a dangerous edge. I'm suggesting you're thinking too small, Santos replied boldly. The Zarathi are clearly one of the most capable species in the galaxy. Your achievements in hostile environment adaptation are remarkable, but expansion through conquest limits you to what you can take and hold. Expansion through alliance gives you access to what others can offer freely. Colonel Thompson stepped forward. War Prime, humans have extensive experience with territorial expansion. We've learned that the most successful expansion comes not from conquering territory, but from creating conditions where others want to join you. The Zarathi delegation was silent for several minutes. Finally, Kethmore spoke. What exactly are you proposing? Dr. Sharma activated a comprehensive presentation they'd prepared during the journey. A partnership model, War Prime. The Zarathi possess unique capabilities that would be invaluable for developing hostile environment colonies. The Council species possess technologies and resources that could accelerate Zarathi development by centuries. Instead of conquering 17 systems, James Murphy added, you could have access to hundreds of systems through trade partnerships. Instead of maintaining occupation forces, you could have willing allies providing resources in exchange for your expertise in hostile environment survival. The Council representatives were listening intently, many of them looking hopeful for the first time since the crisis began. But it was Ambassador Zixtara who asked the crucial question. War Prime, what would the Zarathi require to consider such an arrangement? Kethmore was quiet for a long moment, his predatory gaze moving from human to human. You interest me, he finally said. Your species speaks of cooperation, but you also speak of efficiency and achievement. You understand strength, but you also understand strategy. Very well. I will present terms. What followed was the most intense negotiation in galactic history. The Zarathi wanted exclusive rights to colonize Class X and higher death worlds, which the Council readily agreed to since no one else could survive there anyway. They wanted access to advanced technologies, which the Council was willing to share in exchange for Zarathi expertise in hostile environment engineering. But the breakthrough came when Colonel Thompson made an unexpected suggestion. War Prime, what if the Zarathi became the galaxy's emergency response specialists? Natural disasters, environmental catastrophes, hostile alien encounters, situations where other species can't operate effectively. The idea appealed to Kethmore's sense of Zarathi superiority while providing a legitimate role in galactic society. The Zarathi would be acknowledged as the supreme survivors, called upon when conditions were too dangerous for anyone else. Secretary General Santos watched the negotiations progress with a mixture of pride and amazement. The humans hadn't just survived their first intergalactic diplomatic crisis. They'd turned it into an opportunity for unprecedented galactic cooperation. As the session concluded with preliminary agreements that would need to be ratified by all parties, War Prime Kethmore approached the human delegation personally. Your species is remarkable, he told Santos. You found a way to satisfy Zarathi pride while advancing Council interests. But I'm curious, what does humanity gain from this arrangement? Santos smiled. War Prime, humans thrive on challenges and new experiences. You've just offered us access to an entire galaxy full of both. From our perspective, this isn't a sacrifice, it's the opportunity of a lifetime. As the delegates prepared to return to their respective worlds, Ambassador Zixtara approached Dr. Sharma with a question that had been bothering her throughout the negotiations. Dr. Sharma, I must ask, did you plan this outcome before you arrived? Sharma laughed. Ambassador, humans have a saying. No plan survives contact with the enemy. We came here hoping to prevent a war. We're leaving with the framework for a galactic renaissance. Sometimes the best victories are the ones you never saw coming. Looking back at the humans as they prepared to depart, Zixtara reflected on the day's events. They'd invited humanity to help solve an impossible crisis, and somehow the humans had turned it into an opportunity that benefited everyone involved. Perhaps Dr. Kethvier had been right about humans creating new categories of problems. But, as it turned out, they also created new categories of solutions.